What if you could speak in anyone's voice? That was the dream of the Deluxe Talkboy, introduced 30 years ago in the film Home Alone 2, where Kevin McAllister used the gadget to order his own hotel room in New York at the age of 10.
Howdy do. This is Peter McAllister, the father.
While the Deluxe Talkboy talked a big game, underneath its shiny plastic exterior was a pretty simple tape recorder and a speaker that just had some speed controls. But what if I told you that the original dream of the Talkboy had finally been realized, with advanced AI voice cloning technology and custom-built hardware? This is the brand new Talkboy Ultra, a cutting-edge evolution of a timeless classic. This gadget takes voice transformation to a whole new level. It doesn't just change your voice, it turns you into anyone you want to sound like. For example, it can take a pretty boring part of your day and turn it into something epic. Today, I took a leisurely stroll, and on this ordinary jaunt, my life took an extraordinary turn.
Today, I took a leisurely stroll, and on this ordinary jaunt, my life took an extraordinary turn.
Today, I'll talk about how I created the new Talkboy Ultra, going over the hardware design as well as the software needed to make it work. I'll talk about how I 3D printed the case, and I'll also show off a ton of exciting use cases to get the most out of the toy. I'll also pay homage to the original iconic device, which served as the inspiration for this technological marvel. So let's get started. As I mentioned in the intro, the Deluxe Talkboy was the hottest toy of Christmas 1993 for one big reason: Home Alone 2. The device was featured heavily in the movie, which led to an incredibly popular marketing campaign the year that the movie came out on VHS. As a child of the 90s, there's definitely a section of my brain that is reserved for remembering how the phrases
"Hey, stop drooling on me!"
and
I kids were home early.
sound, just due to the fact that I saw those commercials every afternoon for like a whole year straight. So while the toy was super popular, I actually didn't even have one when I was a kid. I think it was probably too expensive, or I was just too busy playing video games to actually care about it. But I did end up getting a tape recorder later on that basically did the same thing. But even though it was pretty limited in what it could do, I still found the dream of the Talkboy pretty compelling. What if you could change your voice to trick other people into thinking you were someone else? And what if you could use that tool to get a hotel room even though you're just 10 years old? I think the idea stuck in my brain, and I've been holding on to it for the last 30 years. So while I was doing some research on my recent video about voice cloning technology, I had an epiphany. What if I could take all of this technology and cram it into a small handheld device, just like the Talkboy from 1993? So to recreate this classic toy for the 21st century, I used a few base components. The first one was a Raspberry Pi Zero W. The second was a USB speaker. And the third was a USB sound recorder and a lavalier microphone. Lavalier? Lavalier? Lavalier.
Lavalier.
A lavalier microphone. So these were enough to record and play back sound, but I also needed a way to control the device. So I bought some push buttons that I could connect to the GPIO inputs on the Raspberry Pi. So this would let me control recording my voice, as well as playing back the changed voice and choosing which voice I wanted to sound like. Since the Talkboy could be in a number of different states, I also used a generic 1602 LCD display so that I could show the currently selected voice and the status of the device. Finally, since I wanted the device to be truly portable, I used a 1000 milliamp lithium-ion battery, along with a TP4056 charge controller to allow for charging the battery through USB, and an MT3608 to step the battery voltage up to 5 volts, which is required for the Raspberry Pi. And I also added a physical power switch so I could actually turn the thing off. Not that I ever wanted to stop using it. I soldered all the components that I needed together, and amazingly, it all just worked. And at this point, I might just call it done, but it was still just a jumble of components in a small cardboard prototype box, so not really fitted for a YouTube video reveal. So I went through a few iterations of 3D printing a case for this device. And originally, I came up with this blocky sort of big box to test it in. And this was just to see how much space everything would take up. Then I refined the case to make it look a little bit more similar to the original Talkboy, complete with rounded corners, and I made sure to print holes for all the buttons, switches, USB ports, speakers, and displays. And I also made a handle so that I could use the device with one hand, and I also 3D printed a new logo. And so once I was confident that everything would fit together in the case, I hot glued a bunch of the components to the case and super glued the two halves together. And I tried to honor the original design of the Talkboy without tying myself too closely to it. And I think it looks pretty good. And with that, the hardware for the device was done. So next I'll go over the software that I had to write to make the Talkboy Ultra actually work. So I had already gotten my voice cloning software to work on my laptop. And if you're interested in learning more about the voice cloning process, be sure to check out my recent video on that topic. So I was able to make myself sound like Barack Obama and Bill Nye, so I knew the process would actually work, but fitting a laptop's worth of power into a small handheld device was not going to be easy. So I looked at ways to run all of the software on the Raspberry Pi itself, but sadly this just isn't possible yet. So I decided to run the recording and the playback on the Raspberry Pi, but then run the voice changing software on my laptop. So I wrote a program on the Raspberry Pi that would handle updating the display and listening to button presses for both the red recording button and the green playback button. And so to record audio, I press and hold the red button, and then I release it when I'm done. To playback audio, I press the green button once, and to change voices, I can press it twice. So when I finish a voice recording, I send it to a web server that's running locally on my laptop, and then I update the LCD to say that we're processing the audio. The request includes the voice that the user selected, as well as a WAV file of the recording. Then the laptop runs the voice-changing software and sends it back to the Talkboy Ultra. So once the processing is complete, the LCD switches back to let the user know that it's ready to play back the changed voice.
Who is your daddy and what does he do?
So what can you actually do with this thing? Well, you can make yourself sound like pretty much anyone, as long as you've either downloaded or trained a model on that voice. So here are a few things that I've been using this Talkboy Ultra for in my everyday life. To get myself ready for a workout.
Alright, Hing, I want you to pump that iron. Do it now. Come with me if you want to lift.
For ordering food at a drive-thru.
Black bean crunch wrap supreme. Hot.
For justifying a midnight snack.
An entire bag of Doritos. Don't mind if I do.
For reliving my favorite catchphrases.
Do the Bartman. Ay caramba. Eat my shorts. Don't have a cow, man.
Sorry, I'm getting some information here that all of these catchphrases that I was using are super outdated and make me sound like an elder millennial. So here are some new catchphrases for Gen Z that hopefully do not sound super cringy.
This new Talkboy Ultra is straight fire, no cap. It's giving straight 90s vibes right now.
For expressing myself during my commute.
Enough is enough. I've had it with these motherfucking cars in this motherfucking traffic.
So I really had a lot of fun with this project. It really has everything from hardware hacking to 3D printing to embedded software and web software. So I really stretched myself a lot on this project. But I also learned a lot in the process as well. So this is the first time that I've 3D printed something that isn't just like a square box. It's got rounded corners and like a handle and everything. So I'm really happy with the way that this came out. And I had to do a lot of measuring and planning just to make sure that everything would fit into the case itself. So while my trombone champ controller was also battery powered, this project was a little bit more complicated just because I had to have a charge controller in it as well as the step-up converter. And so I really had to learn a lot about electronics to make sure that it worked and didn't blow up, which luckily it hasn't yet. And while I've written a lot of software in my life, it's still pretty fun to just build something that uses buttons, that you actually press physically, and like an LCD screen that's just specifically for showing voices instead of, a screen that can show literally anything. So in terms of the future of the Talkboy Ultra, I would actually love it if a company just decided to make this thing into a reality in the mass market. But I have a feeling that that probably won't happen until someone gets past the hurdle of being able to run everything on the local device, because it's probably not good enough to sell to little kids if it has to have a network connection. Although maybe if you could connect it to a phone or something that does the processing, that would work. Or just make it a phone app. But that's not as fun as having like a physical device that you can hold in your hand with a handle. And with the speed that AI technology is progressing right now, we might actually see a device like this sooner rather than later. As always, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to smash those like and subscribe buttons. And let me know what you thought about the Talkboy Ultra. Were there any voices that I should have added to the toy? Do you think that they should make a Home Alone reboot based on this device? Let me know in the comments below. I'll see you next time, and as always,
Live long and prosper, and happy voice cloning.